The sun is barely rising as Jack Turner's boots crunch softly on the weathered cobblestones. The chill of the morning air feels almost too heavy, as if the village is holding its breath, waiting for something. The silence is all-encompassing. The kind of silence that hides secrets, the kind that makes you feel like something sinister is lurking just beneath the surface. Nestled in the hills of Eastern Europe, far from the bustling cities, lies a forgotten village. It's the kind of place where time seems to have stopped, with the faint scent of burning wood in the air, mixing with the decay of once thriving homes. This place, now a shadow of what it once was, has a story, a dark, haunting story. It's a story that the world never knew, a genocide that has been buried for decades. Jack adjusts the strap of his worn leather bag, his breath forming small clouds in the morning cold. As a journalist, he's been to war zones, conflict-ridden countries, and disaster sites. But something about this village feels different. Something about it feels wrong. The air seems thick, and every corner Jack turns, every glance from the few villagers that remain, holds an unease that he can't shake off. The story behind this place has been lost to history, overshadowed by more famous massacres, by louder tragedies. But Jack is here to change that. His hands tremble slightly as he takes out his notebook, ready to document the stories of the survivors, if he can find any willing to speak. Jack had received a letter weeks ago, a letter from an anonymous source claiming to know the truth behind an atrocity that took place here over 30 years ago. In the letter, it was stated that the massacre had been orchestrated by someone in the village itself, someone who was never caught, someone who vanished after the bloodshed. The village had been wiped off the map of history, its story silenced by the passing years and the world's indifference. When Jack arrives at the village, it looks like any other small, dilapidated rural town, houses with peeling paint, narrow roads, and overgrown fields. But the faces of the few elderly residents he meets are all grim. Their eyes avoid his, or worse, they stare at him with a kind of quiet, knowing fear. The first few attempts to gather information are met with silence, the kind of silence that carries more weight than words ever could. Jack's first real contact comes in the form of Anya, an elderly woman who appears to be in her late 70s. She lives alone in a house on the outskirts of the village, its once white walls now darkened with soot from years of neglect. When Jack knocks on her door, she answers slowly, her frail hands gripping the doorknob. Her face is withered and tired, eyes clouded with the weight of memory. "I don't speak much to outsiders," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not here to judge," Jack reassures her. "I just want to hear the truth about what happened here." Anya hesitates, her gaze flickering to the empty streets behind Jack. Then, with a sigh, she steps aside, allowing him into her home. As they sit in the dimly lit living room, Anya's voice trembles as she begins to recount the horrors of that night. "It was winter, the kind of winter that freezes your bones, and we never expected anything to happen. It came like a storm, without warning," she says, her hands shaking as she stirs her tea. She talks about the nights of screaming, of seeing the men in the shadows, faces hidden behind masks. The blood. The bodies. The families that were wiped out in mere hours. But it wasn't just the soldiers, she continues, her voice growing quieter, as if the memory is too much to bear. There was a man, he was in charge. They called him the Shadow. He knew everything. He made sure we all knew who he was. And then, he disappeared, just like that. Jack's pen hovers over his notebook. "Do you know who he was? Do you know where he went?" Anya's eyes flicker toward the window, and for a long moment, she doesn't answer. Then, finally, she looks back at him. "No one knows. Some say he died with the others. But I think he's still here, still watching. Still waiting." Jack leaves Anya's house with a heavy heart. There are so many questions, but one thing lingers at the back of his mind, the mention of the Shadow. Jack had heard whispers of this name, but never with such certainty. It's almost as if he were more than just a man, he was a symbol, a legend. And that legend might still be alive, somewhere in the village. Jack takes a walk through the village after leaving Anya's home, letting the weight of her words settle in his mind. The more he thinks about it, the more uneasy he becomes. He passes empty houses, their windows shattered, the air thick with dust. A few children stare at him from the edges of the village, their eyes wide and curious. One child, no older than 10, steps forward, holding a faded picture in his hand. "It's my family," the child says, showing him the photo. It's a picture of a family, 2 parents, 2 children, smiling in front of a house. The boy points to the man in the picture. "That's my father. They say he was taken away, but they never came back." The boy's voice cracks, and for a moment, Jack is at a loss for words. The picture is a reminder of the families lost that night, of the lives destroyed by someone still unknown. The haunting image of the boy's face stays with him as he walks away. As Jack turns a corner to head back to the village square, something catches his eye, an old, withered piece of paper stuck to a nearby fence. It looks like a faded photograph, torn at the edges. He approaches, and when he pulls it from the fence, his heart skips a beat. It's a photograph of the shadow, but the image is disturbingly familiar. It's the same man from the photograph Anya showed him earlier. But there's something even more unsettling about this one. He's standing beside Jack's own father. The man in the photo is wearing a military uniform, but it's Jack's father's face that stares back at him, his features frozen in time. The connection is immediate, and a cold shiver runs down Jack's spine. How could his father be involved in this massacre? The truth is already beginning to unravel, but what happens when the past catches up with you? Jack thought he was prepared for anything, but now he's beginning to question everything he thought he knew. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where the investigation takes a shocking turn. The early morning fog still lingers over the village as Jack walks back to the inn. His footsteps echo in the stillness, the weight of the photograph heavy in his hands. The image is seared into his mind, the man he had assumed was his father, standing next to the shadow. But that's not what unsettles him most. It's the fact that, for all the silence surrounding this village, there's still so much more hidden here. A missing piece. A witness who vanished without a trace. Jack stops momentarily, glancing over his shoulder. He feels eyes on him, even though he knows no one is near. The sensation is unnerving, but he's used to the paranoia that comes with digging too deep. In his line of work, this is what happens when the past refuses to stay buried. Back in the inn, Jack spreads the photograph on the small wooden table in his room. His mind races. How could his father have been involved in this? And why was there no mention of this photograph in any of the historical records he had looked through? The pieces don't add up. Before he can delve deeper into his thoughts, Jack's attention shifts to the stack of papers he's gathered from the village archive. A few old documents, yellowed with age, catch his eye. They are reports from a local trial that never went forward, a trial that should have been the culmination of an investigation into the massacre. But the trial never happened. The files indicate that the key witness was a man named Martin Kowalski, a local farmer who had survived the bloodshed. His testimony was to be the cornerstone of the case. Jack's curiosity is piqued. He's heard the name before. Rumors had circulated that Martin was one of the few to escape the massacre. But then he vanished. No one knows what happened to him after that. The village authorities were quick to label the case as a tragic but isolated event, sweeping the incident under the rug. But Jack's instincts tell him otherwise. He begins poring over the documents, cross-referencing names, dates, and places. The more he reads, the more disturbing the pattern becomes. Martin Kowalski had been the key to unraveling everything, but it seems the authorities had deliberately hidden his whereabouts after his testimony. Someone was covering their tracks, and Jack was getting closer to finding out who. In his search, Jack stumbles across a chilling discovery. Hidden in one of the files, he finds a handwritten note, scribbled in the margins of an old police report. It reads, "Witness disappeared. No further action." The words are too cryptic, too dismissive for something as important as a missing witness. The report lists the last known address of Martin Kowalski as a small cabin near the outskirts of the village, next to a shallow river that runs through the region. Jack knows he has to follow this lead, even though it might bring him closer to the dark heart of this conspiracy. There's no turning back now. What happened to Martin Kowalski? Why was he silenced, and why does no one want to talk about it? Follow Jack as he traces the last known steps of the man who could have exposed everything. Don't miss out, where things get even darker. By late afternoon, Jack arrives at the cabin. The area is quiet, almost too quiet. The river's murmuring fills the air, but otherwise, there is no sound, no birds, no footsteps. The cabin is weathered and abandoned, its roof caving in at one corner, windows boarded up. A shiver runs down Jack's spine as he steps onto the porch. It looks like it hasn't been touched in years. Inside, the atmosphere is oppressive. Dust settles thick on the wooden floors, and the faint smell of mildew hangs in the air. The place seems frozen in time, but as Jack surveys the room, he spots something that doesn't belong, a stack of papers in the corner, buried under a torn blanket. It's a journal. Martin's journal. With trembling hands, Jack flips through the pages. As he reads, his stomach turns. The entries are fragmented, written in a frantic scrawl. Martin's fear is palpable. He describes in great detail the events of that fateful night, the sound of the gunfire, the screams, and, most importantly, the man he calls the Shadow. But it's the last entry that chills Jack to the core. In it, Martin describes a secret meeting, one that took place just days before the massacre. A meeting attended by the Shadow and several others, a collection of names that had never appeared in the official records. The names mentioned are all too familiar to Jack: high-ranking military officers, local politicians, people with power and influence, people who had every reason to keep the truth buried. Suddenly, Jack hears a sound, footsteps on the floor above him. He freezes, his heart racing. The floorboards creak louder, and the sound of a door opening is followed by a heavy, shuffling sound. Someone is in the house. Jack barely has time to react before the door to the cabin bursts open, and a figure steps into the room. His hand instinctively moves toward the knife he keeps on his belt, but he freezes when he sees who it is. It's Anya, the elderly woman from the village. Her face is pale, and her hands tremble as she steps forward. She looks at the journal in Jack's hands, and then at him, her expression a mix of guilt and fear. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispers, her voice breaking. Jack's mind spins. Why is Anya here? Why does she know about Martin's journal? The questions race through his head, but before he can ask anything, Anya steps forward, her eyes brimming with tears. "I tried to warn you," she says, her voice barely audible. "They're watching you. They always watch." The reality of the situation starts to sink in. This isn't just an investigation. It's a dangerous game, and Jack has already crossed a line that cannot be undone. Anya's confession adds a layer of complexity to the case. She knows more than she's letting on, and Jack feels a chill run through him as he realizes that the entire village may be complicit in this conspiracy. "Martin," she whispers. "He found something. Something that would have brought them all down. And now they're coming for you, too." Jack grips the journal tightly, his knuckles white. His investigation has only just begun, but already it feels as though the walls are closing in. Is Anya really trying to help, or is she hiding something even darker? Jack is one step closer to the truth, but the danger is real. Stay tuned as the mystery deepens. You won't believe what's coming next. The night is alive with the sounds of the river crashing against the rocks beneath the moonlight, but for Jack, the only thing that matters is the diary in his hands. Martin Kowalski's final entry weighs heavily on him, every word etched with fear, every sentence a piece of a puzzle Jack is beginning to see. But there's one line that stands out more than the rest: the Shadow is no ordinary man. He is more dangerous than you can imagine. And the power behind him reaches further than you think. Jack can't shake the feeling that the walls of this village are closing in. As he steps away from the cabin, his mind races. It was supposed to be simple, a forgotten tragedy to uncover. But now, he's finding himself chasing shadows, clues that refuse to fit together, names that keep popping up with disturbing frequency. The deeper he digs, the more it feels like he's been lured into a trap that he can't escape from. Back at the inn, Jack can barely focus as he reads through Martin's journal. Each entry reveals the increasing paranoia of a man who knew too much. The Shadow, a figure whose real identity is still a mystery, wasn't alone in orchestrating the massacre. The more Jack uncovers, the more he realizes that the killings were not just a random act of violence. They were part of a much larger operation, one that involved powerful individuals with stakes far beyond this small village. One entry, dated just days before the massacre, stands out. Martin describes seeing the Shadow meeting with a group of men whose names Jack recognizes from his research. They were local politicians, military officers, and business elites, all of whom had ties to the region's government. They discussed plans for the future of the village, which would be cleaned up to eliminate opposition. The tone of the entry makes it clear that this was no simple village conflict. It was a carefully orchestrated purge. Jack starts to connect the dots. The massacre wasn't just about eliminating a community, it was about erasing a threat to the power structures that ruled this region. But there's a bigger question lingering at the back of his mind. Who exactly is the Shadow, and what is his role in all of this? To answer that, Jack needs to uncover the true identity of the man responsible. And that means going deeper into the stories of the key players Martin mentioned. Jack's first breakthrough comes when he meets Zara Duval, an investigative historian who specializes in wartime atrocities. She's been researching the events of the massacre for years, piecing together old documents and testimonies. When Jack shares his findings with her, Zara grows visibly alarmed. She pulls up an old photograph from her files, a black and white image of a group of men, standing side by side at a military ceremony. Among them is General Andrei Nikitin, a well-known military officer who was once stationed in the region. Jack freezes. He recognizes the name. Nikitin had been implicated in several war crimes during the civil unrest that plagued this area decades ago, but his name had never surfaced in connection with the massacre. Zara explains that while Nikitin had been publicly disgraced and sent away from the region after a scandal, there had always been whispers that he had quietly returned under a different name. She believes Nikitin might be the Shadow, but to prove it, Jack needs more than just photographs and rumors. It's time to track down the people who knew General Nikitin, people who could confirm his involvement. But before Jack can make any plans, Zara gives him a warning. Be careful. Some of the people still in power have a vested interest in keeping the truth buried. If they find out what you're doing, you'll be next on their list. Could General Nikitin be the man behind the massacre? What if the man responsible for the killings is hiding in plain sight? The investigation is about to take a dangerous turn. Stay tuned as Jack goes deeper into the heart of this conspiracy. With Zara's information in hand, Jack travels to a nearby town to track down anyone who might have known Nikitin during his time as a military officer. He visits a local cafe, one frequented by older villagers who might have been around when Nikitin served. After hours of questioning, Jack finds an unlikely source, Yuri Petrov, a former soldier who had served under Nikitin in the early 1980s. Yuri is reluctant to speak at first, but after some persistence, Jack manages to get him to open up. Yuri reveals that Nikitin was not just a military officer, he was a man with ambitions. A man who believed that power could only be maintained through violence and control. Nikitin was known for his ruthlessness, especially when dealing with dissent. Yuri recalls how Nikitin once ordered the execution of an entire family simply because they were suspected of aiding a rival faction. But the most shocking revelation comes when Yuri describes the moment he saw Nikitin with the Shadow, the same man Jack had seen in the photograph. According to Yuri, Nikitin had always been one step ahead, pulling strings from behind the scenes. The massacre, it seemed, was just another part of his grand plan. Nikitin had been the mastermind, orchestrating everything from the shadows, while others like the Shadow carried out the dirty work. Yuri's confession shakes Jack to the core, but it also raises new questions. If Nikitin was the Shadow, why would he need a second identity? And why did he disappear after the massacre? Was it to escape accountability, or was there something more to the story? As Jack prepares to leave Yuri's apartment, a sudden phone call interrupts his thoughts. It's Zara, her voice filled with urgency. Jack, you need to get out of there. They're coming for you. The line goes dead before Jack can respond. His heart races as he grabs his things and rushes out into the night. He has no idea who they are, but one thing is certain: the investigation has just taken a dangerous turn. The weight of his discoveries begins to weigh heavily on Jack. He's no longer just chasing a story, he's in the midst of something much larger, something that could cost him his life. The faces of the survivors, their eyes filled with fear and anger, haunt him. He knows that he has to uncover the truth, but the further he goes, the more dangerous the path becomes. The line between justice and obsession begins to blur. The closer Jack gets to the truth, the more dangerous it becomes. Who else is involved in this twisted conspiracy? And will Jack make it out alive to tell the story? Find out next as the investigation takes a dark turn. The sun barely pierces through the thick clouds as Jack drives down the narrow road, his thoughts heavy with the weight of everything he's discovered so far. The journal entries, the photographs, the whispered secrets, it's all pointing in the same direction: General Andrei Nikitin. But as Jack's investigation moves forward, he begins to realize that Nikitin isn't the only player in this game. There are others. Powerful figures in positions of influence who have been pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Jack stops at a small, run-down diner on the outskirts of town, a place he frequents for its cheap coffee and dismal service. It's the perfect place to lay low, to think, to gather his thoughts. But today, it feels like a trap. His instincts scream at him to leave, but he stays, unable to shake the feeling that he's being watched. A figure enters the diner. It's Zara, her face drawn with worry. She sits across from him, her eyes scanning the room nervously before she leans in close. "You're getting too close, Jack," she says, her voice low, barely audible over the hum of the diner's fluorescent lights. "I've been talking to some people, and it's worse than you think." Zara's warning isn't just paranoia, it's based on cold, hard facts. She reveals that the massacre wasn't the first time these elites used violence to maintain control. In fact, the massacre was just one chapter in a much larger, far-reaching plan that spanned decades. Zara pulls out a file, heavy with documents that Jack had never seen before. These people, Nikitin, his allies, they've been manipulating the region for years, she continues. Politicians, military officers, businessmen, all of them part of a corrupt network that has been pulling the strings in this region. They've used violence, economic control, and even entire conflicts to keep the power in their hands. And now, they've built a system so entrenched that it's impossible to break without bringing the whole system crashing down. Jack takes in the documents, his mind racing. The more he learns, the more he begins to see the full scope of what he's up against. Nikitin might be the face of the conspiracy, but he's just one piece in a much larger puzzle. Zara continues, her voice growing more urgent. "There's one man you haven't looked at yet, Jack. Someone who's been operating from the shadows for years. His name is Eduard Markov, and he's the key to understanding everything. He was the one who helped Nikitin secure his rise to power in the first place. And if you want to know what's really going on, you have to dig into Markov's past." Markov is a name Jack recognizes. He's a former politician, once regarded as a rising star in the region's government. But Markov's political career was abruptly cut short by a scandal that destroyed his reputation. Officially, he was dismissed from his position and sent away from the public eye. But Zara claims that Markov never truly left. He's been operating in the shadows, manipulating events from behind closed doors. Markov and Nikitin were more than just allies. They were partners, Zara explains. They ran a network of influence that spanned across military, political, and business sectors. And now, their past is catching up with them. Markov has been hiding in plain sight all this time. Could he be the true mastermind behind the massacre? What secrets is he hiding? Jack is about to uncover the full extent of the conspiracy, but the danger is escalating. Stay tuned as Jack digs deeper into the web of lies and power. The more Jack hears, the more his sense of unease grows. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together, but there's something missing. Something that links Markov and Nikitin together in a way Jack never anticipated. Zara tells him about an old military contract between Markov's company and the regional government, a contract that was kept hidden from the public eye, a deal that involved the construction of military facilities and the transportation of arms. The deal had been covered up, but it was clear that this business venture was tied to the massacre in some way. Markov knew the village was a liability, Zara says. When they decided to wipe out the opposition, they needed a way to cover it up. That's where Nikitin came in. He was the enforcer, the one who ensured the massacre went down without a hitch. Jack's next move is clear. He needs to get to Markov. He needs to know what role this man played in the massacre and whether he was involved in the broader conspiracy that Zara described. Jack decides to track down one of Markov's old associates, someone who might have information on the shady deal between him and Nikitin. This leads him to a retired businessman named Viktor Vasilyev, a former partner of Markov's who had fallen out with him years ago. Viktor lives in a secluded villa outside of town, far from the reach of anyone who might want to silence him. When Jack arrives at Viktor's home, the man is hesitant to speak at first, but Jack manages to convince him. As Viktor talks, it becomes clear that Markov was more than just a politician. He was a manipulator, a man who controlled the flow of information and power. Viktor confirms that Markov and Nikitin had been involved in orchestrating more than just the massacre. Their business ventures, their manipulation of local elections, and their control over the region's economy were all part of a strategy to keep themselves in power. Markov was untouchable, Viktor says. He had everyone in his pocket: police, military, government officials. When he wanted something done, it was done. No questions asked. Jack listens, horrified by the breadth of the conspiracy. What he thought was a single massacre was in fact a small piece of a larger power play, one that had been taking place for decades. The more Viktor talks, the clearer it becomes. Markov and Nikitin were the architects of an empire built on blood and lies. Jack feels the weight of the investigation bearing down on him. What started as a journalistic pursuit has now turned into something far more personal. With each revelation, Jack's own ties to the case become clearer. The deeper he digs, the more he uncovers about the people who caused the death of so many, including families like his own. There's a sense of powerlessness that lingers, the realization that he's not just uncovering a story but confronting the very systems that perpetuate violence and control. The more Jack uncovers, the darker the truth becomes. How far will the corruption go? And how far is Jack willing to push to get to the truth? The investigation is reaching its breaking point. Don't miss out as the true scale of the conspiracy is revealed. The night air is thick with tension as Jack leaves Viktor's villa, the weight of the information he just uncovered pressing down on his chest. Every step feels like it's taking him deeper into a dangerous web, a web spun by powerful men who have done everything in their power to keep their secrets buried. As Jack drives back into the town, he feels the unmistakable sensation of being watched. His rearview mirror shows nothing but darkness, but that nagging feeling claws at him, the sensation that someone is tailing him. As he turns onto a side street near the inn, a black SUV pulls into the intersection behind him. It's an unsettling sight, one that confirms the dread creeping down his spine. Jack knows he's in danger, but there's no turning back now. He's too far into the investigation. He has no choice but to face whatever comes next. Jack's heart pounds as he pulls over to the side of the road, trying to shake the SUV. It's been tailing him for the past several miles, always keeping a safe distance but never losing sight of him. His mind races, calculating his next move. He can't afford to be caught. Not now, not when he's this close to the truth. He reaches for his phone, about to dial Zara, when the SUV suddenly accelerates, pulling up alongside him. Before he can react, the passenger window rolls down, and a voice calls out from the darkened interior. "Get out of the car, Jack." It's a voice Jack doesn't recognize, but the tone is unmistakably threatening. It's not a request, it's an order. Jack's hand moves instinctively toward the glove compartment where his gun is stored, but he stops himself. He's not looking for a fight. Not tonight. Instead, he steps out of the car, his mind racing with potential escape routes. The moment his feet hit the ground, two men step out of the SUV, their faces obscured by the shadows. Jack can see the glint of something metallic in one of their hands, likely a weapon. His instincts scream at him to run, but he knows that would only make things worse. The taller of the two men approaches Jack, his steps slow and deliberate. "You're getting too close," he says, his voice low. "We can't let you ruin everything we've worked for." Jack's heart skips a beat. These aren't just ordinary thugs, they know exactly what he's after. They've been watching him for days, waiting for him to make a move. And now that he's dug too deep, they're ready to silence him. Before Jack can respond, the second man pulls out a document, holding it up in front of Jack's face. It's a photograph, one Jack has seen before, but with a chilling difference. It's the same picture of the Shadow, the man who orchestrated the massacre. But this time, the man standing next to him is Jack's father, not just a face in the crowd, but part of the operation, part of the conspiracy. The words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. His father. The one man he thought was innocent, the man who raised him, the man he'd spent his entire life trying to understand, was involved in the massacre. In some twisted way, he had been part of the same web Jack was now tangled in. Who are these men, and what do they know about Jack's father? How far will they go to protect their secrets? The stakes are higher than ever, and Jack is running out of time. Stay tuned as the chase intensifies and the truth begins to unravel. The two men continue to circle Jack, their eyes cold and calculating. They're trying to intimidate him, but Jack stands his ground. He can't let them see his fear, not now, not after everything he's uncovered. His mind is racing, trying to piece together what this revelation about his father means. How could his father have been involved in something so horrific? What was his role in the massacre, and how much did he know? The taller man takes a step closer, a predatory smile playing on his lips. "We know you're looking for the truth, Jack," he says. "But some truths are better left buried." Jack takes a deep breath. He has no idea who these men are, but one thing is clear, they want him to stop asking questions. They'll do whatever it takes to shut him up. But Jack isn't backing down. "Not now." "I'm not afraid of you," Jack says, his voice steady. "You're not going to scare me into stopping." "Not now." The man laughs, the sound cold and humorless. "We'll see about that." Before Jack can react, one of the men pulls out a gun, pointing it directly at him. Jack freezes, his heart racing. This is it, the point of no return. The moment when the investigation could cost him everything. But just as the man pulls the trigger, there's a sudden flash of light. A car screeches to a halt behind the men. The men turn, startled, and Jack seizes the moment. He dives into the passenger seat of his car, slamming the door behind him. The SUV lurches forward as Jack speeds away, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He's not sure if they'll follow, but for the first time in a long time, Jack feels the weight of the danger he's in. As Jack drives through the winding streets, he looks in the rearview mirror to see the SUV still following him. It's relentless, and Jack knows that he can't outrun them for long. But then, a new thought hits him. What if they want him alive? What if they're not trying to kill him, they're trying to force him into silence? As Jack makes a sharp turn, he spots a police car ahead. Without thinking, he swerves to the side, pulling into an alley. He slams on the brakes, skidding to a halt. He quickly turns off the headlights and ducks low in the seat, praying the men won't see him. For what feels like an eternity, Jack waits in the darkness, holding his breath. The sound of the SUV's engine grows louder, but just when it seems they will pass him by, the vehicle slows down and turns down a side street. Jack exhales, relieved, but only for a moment. The escape only lasts for a few moments before Jack's mind begins to race again. His father. The photograph. The connection to the massacre. His thoughts swirl in confusion, anger, and betrayal. How could he have been so blind? How could he have spent his whole life thinking of his father as a man of honor, when he may have been a part of something so grotesque? Jack's thoughts turn inward as he realizes the full scope of his investigation. It's no longer just about exposing the truth, It's about understanding who he is and what kind of man his father truly was. The revelation has shaken him to his core, but it's also hardened his resolve. He can't stop now. He knows that someone close to him, perhaps even someone he trusted, is orchestrating this entire conspiracy. And Jack won't stop until he uncovers every last piece of it. Jack has barely escaped with his life, but the investigation is far from over. The deeper he goes, the more dangerous the truth becomes. Will Jack find out what happened to his father? Or will he become the next target? Stay tuned as the chase continues. The weight of the past is crushing, each moment heavy with the knowledge that Jack is on the edge of a discovery that could shatter everything. The SUV that had been tailing him is gone now, but Jack knows it's only a matter of time before the men come after him again. The town is quiet, too quiet, as if the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for the final act of this tragic play to unfold. Jack's pulse races as he pulls into a small, deserted parking lot near the outskirts of the city, a place he's been warned about, Markov's compound. Jack hasn't heard from Zara since their last conversation, and the fear gnaws at him. He has no choice now but to confront the source of all the lies. Eduard Markov. The man whose twisted machinations have caused untold suffering. The man whose legacy is blood-soaked, whose hands are stained with the deaths of so many. The man behind everything. Tonight, it all ends. Jack takes a deep breath before stepping out of the car. His hand hovers near his jacket pocket, where the gun rests, but he knows he doesn't want to resort to violence. He needs answers. This confrontation isn't just about bringing someone to justice, it's about unearthing the truth that has haunted him for so long. Markov's legacy. The massacre. His father's involvement. He walks towards the compound, his boots clicking against the concrete, each step heavier than the last. The compound is isolated, nestled in the shadow of the mountains, surrounded by high fences and guards. The once grand estate now looks dilapidated, a mere shell of its former glory. The oppressive silence is broken only by the faint sound of wind rustling through the trees. The closer Jack gets, the more he senses the gravity of the situation. He knows that whatever happens tonight will define the rest of his life. This is the final confrontation. Jack approaches the front door, his hand tightening around the doorknob. He hesitates for a moment, but then the door swings open to reveal Eduard Markov, standing there, his face calm and unreadable. Markov looks at Jack with an expression of quiet recognition, as if he had been expecting this moment all along. "Well, Jack," Markov says, his voice cold and measured. "I wondered when you would show up. I've been waiting for this." Jack's stomach churns as Markov steps aside, ushering him into the dimly lit foyer of the compound. Jack doesn't know if he's more afraid of the man in front of him or the overwhelming sense of inevitability that presses down on him like a weight. Markov leads him through the dark halls, the mansion eerily silent, except for the sound of their footsteps echoing off the marble floors. "You know why you're here," Markov continues, his voice barely above a whisper. "But do you really want to know the truth, Jack? The truth behind all of this? Behind your father?" Jack feels his heart skip a beat. His father. This is it, the moment when everything will come crashing down. "I know what you've uncovered," Markov says, his gaze piercing. "But there are things you don't know. Things that would make you understand why we did what we did." Markov pauses in front of a large portrait on the wall. It's a painting of Jack's father, standing next to Markov, both men smiling, their arms draped around each other's shoulders. But the expression on Jack's father's face is different from the memories Jack has. There is no warmth, no love. Only cold calculation. Markov watches Jack's reaction closely, as if savoring his discomfort. "Your father was a great man, Jack," he says slowly. "But he was a man of ambition. A man who understood that power could only be maintained through force. And your father wasn't just involved in the massacre, he was the architect of it." Jack's breath catches in his throat. "What are you talking about?" he stammers. "My father had nothing to do with that. He wasn't a part of this." Markov turns to face Jack, his expression hardening. "You think he didn't understand what we were doing?" That he wasn't a part of the plan? He helped us clean the slate. Your father wasn't the innocent man you think he was. He was in on everything from the start. The massacre was his idea. The words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. His father, the man who had raised him, the man he had loved and respected, had been a key player in the deaths of countless innocent people. Jack struggles to breathe as the weight of this revelation settles in. His father wasn't just a victim of the system, he was part of the system. Markov watches him with cold eyes, sensing the shock, the disillusionment that is starting to take root. Your father did what needed to be done, he says, almost too calmly. He understood the nature of power. He knew that sacrifices had to be made for the greater good. For the future. Jack can't speak. His world is crumbling around him. The one person he trusted, the one person he had believed was untouchable, was as corrupt as the men Jack had been chasing. Don't you see, Jack? Markov continues, his voice softer now, almost sympathetic. It wasn't just about killing. It was about rebuilding. About creating a new order. Your father and I, we were simply doing what had to be done. Jack feels his stomach churn, and suddenly, everything comes into focus. The manipulation, the lies, the twisted justification. His father had been a willing participant in this horror. And Jack had been blind to it all. Just as Jack is about to confront Markov, the sound of doors slamming open echoes through the mansion. Suddenly, two figures rush into the room, Zara and a man Jack recognizes instantly, General Andrei Nikitin. The sight of him, standing there like a ghost from the past, sends a jolt of adrenaline through Jack. We need to go, now, Zara says urgently, her eyes wide with fear. They know you're here, Jack. This entire place is a trap. Jack doesn't have time to react before Nikitin steps forward, his cold eyes locking with Jack's. You've come too far, he says, his voice low and dangerous. And now, you're going to regret it. Before Jack can make a move, the lights flicker, and a deafening siren begins to wail throughout the compound. Panic rises in his chest. It's all happening too fast. Everything Jack thought he knew has been turned upside down. But who can he trust now? With his father's true involvement in the massacre revealed, and enemies closing in on all sides, the final confrontation is far from over. Will Jack make it out alive, or will he be silenced forever? Stay tuned for the shocking conclusion to this investigation. Nikitin's men pour into the room, armed and ready. The compound is no longer just a place of answers, it's become a battlefield. Jack is surrounded, with no clear way out, and the weight of his father's betrayal still fresh in his mind. As the tension rises, Zara grabs Jack by the arm. We need to move, now, she hisses, pulling him toward the back of the mansion. The final confrontation has begun, and Jack realizes that if he's going to survive this, he has to face the darkest truths of all, his father's involvement, Markov's manipulations, and the truth about the shadow. As the storm of chaos unfolds around him, Jack knows one thing for certain, the conspiracy is far deeper than he ever imagined. The cold wind cuts through the broken windows of the mansion as Jack and Zara race through the dark hallways, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The compound is in chaos, lights flashing, alarms blaring, as Markov's men chase them down. But Jack's mind is clouded, not with fear, but with anger, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal. His father's face, once a symbol of strength, now haunts him as the truth settles in. Move faster, Zara urges, her grip tight on Jack's arm. But Jack barely hears her, his mind spiraling. The pieces of the puzzle have finally clicked into place, but now it feels as though the whole world is collapsing around him. Jack's father was part of this. His own father was involved in orchestrating the massacre that claimed countless lives, including the family of innocent villagers. The realization has shaken him to his core. How could he have missed the signs? How could he have been so blind? But there's no time for answers. Not now. The men are closing in, and there's only one path left to take. They make their way to the underground tunnels beneath the mansion, the air damp and cold. Zara has been here before, she knows the layout of the compound well. But even she seems uncertain now, glancing over her shoulder as the sounds of pursuit grow closer. Jack feels his heart pounding in his chest, his breath coming in short bursts. As they reach the exit to the tunnel, Zara stops and turns to face him. "Jack, listen to me. This is it. Once we get out, there's no going back. The truth is out now, but they'll never stop hunting us. They won't stop until they silence everything we know." Jack nods, the weight of her words sinking in. He's lost everything: his father, the man he admired, his belief in justice. The investigation was never just about uncovering the massacre, it was about confronting his own past, his own identity. But now, the personal stakes have become so much higher. "I'm ready," Jack says, his voice steady, though his hands tremble. He's not just running for his life anymore, he's running for something much bigger: the truth, the victims, the people who were silenced by the conspiracy he's just uncovered. As they exit the tunnel, the air is thick with the scent of rain and the sound of distant sirens. The mansion behind them burns brightly in the night, flames licking the sky. It's a symbol of the destruction caused by the power-hungry men who orchestrated everything. But as Jack takes a step toward the edge of the property, he sees something that freezes him in his tracks. A car pulls up to the gate. Nikitin steps out, flanked by two of his men. His expression is cold, calculating, as always, but there's something different in his eyes now. There's no more pretension, no more games. This is the final act. "You think you've won, Jack?" Nikitin calls out, his voice carrying in the stillness of the night. "You think exposing the truth will change anything? You think people will care? The world has moved on, and the victims? They're forgotten. Just like you will be." Zara pushes Jack behind her, her stance protective, but Jack steps forward. "You won't get away with it, Nikitin. Not now. The truth is already out there." Nikitin's lips curl into a cruel smile. "Do you really believe that, Jack? Do you think you can bring down everything we've built? You're nothing but a pawn in a game you'll never understand." As Nikitin's words ring in his ears, Jack feels a wave of helplessness wash over him. He's no longer the naive journalist chasing a story. He's a man who's seen the darkest corners of humanity, who's uncovered horrors so great that they have permanently changed the way he sees the world. But in the face of this evil, in the face of Nikitin's calm, insidious confidence, Jack feels the weight of his failure. He couldn't stop it in time. The massacre happened, and his father was complicit. And now, there's nothing left to save. Jack turns to Zara, his eyes hard. "We need to finish this. We need to make sure they can never hurt anyone again." Zara nods, but her expression is grim. "We can expose them, Jack. We can make sure the world knows the truth. But you can't do it alone. Not anymore." Jack stands tall, realizing in that moment that he's no longer alone. This is about more than just bringing down a corrupt system. It's about making sure the victims' voices are heard, that they get the justice they deserve. Just as Jack and Zara prepare to confront Nikitin, the roar of engines interrupts the tension. The police. Flashing lights fill the night, followed by several vehicles screeching to a halt at the entrance of the compound. Armed officers pour out, surrounding Nikitin and his men. For a moment, Jack stands frozen, unsure of what's happening. Has the government finally acted? A woman steps out from one of the police cars. It's Agent Elena Kovacs, a woman Jack had met during his early research into the massacre. She'd been a part of the investigation, but he hadn't known how deeply she was involved. "Elena?" Jack says, disbelief in his voice. She nods grimly. "I've been following your progress, Jack. I didn't want it to come to this, but it seems we've reached the end." "Wait, what's happening?" Jack asks, confusion clouding his thoughts. "You've done the hard work," Elena replies, her voice steady. "Now, we finish it. Nikitin and Markov are about to face the consequences of their actions, but it's not just them we're after. We've got enough evidence now to take down the entire network, Jack. The truth will come out, even if it takes everything." Jack feels a surge of hope, but it's fleeting. The truth, the real truth, has already taken its toll on him. His father's involvement is something he'll never escape, and it will forever change the way he sees his world. But for the first time in weeks, he feels like justice might actually be within reach. This is the end game. As the authorities begin to close in on Nikitin, Jack watches the man he once feared, the man who had orchestrated so much pain, finally face the law. But even as the shackles are placed on Nikitin's wrists, Jack knows that the road ahead will be long and painful. He's lost his father, and with it, the naive belief that justice always prevails. The weight of the lies, the corruption, the people who suffered, it's all too much to bear. But as the sirens wail in the distance and the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, Jack knows that this chapter, though deeply painful, is over. The investigation has brought closure to the victims, but it's also given Jack a new sense of purpose. He's not just a journalist anymore. He's a voice for the silenced, a beacon for those who have been ignored. The truth is painful, but it is necessary. "Thank you," Jack says quietly to Zara, his voice hoarse. "We did it." Zara looks at him, her expression softening. "We did it, Jack. Together." The truth has been exposed, but the journey doesn't end here. The fight for justice is ongoing, and there are always more stories to tell. Join Jack as he continues to uncover the untold stories of the world, and remember, the fight for truth never ends.